Welcome to Wave Wasters, I'm Matt, and today I'm going to continue on with the Otter bite build by installing the fin boxes. So the next step for the Otter bite is adding the fin boxes. So I'm going to go over how I install future fins using my homemade jig on this board. And this board's going to have 5 fin boxes in the tail, and then I'm going to put 3 in the nose so that I can play around with different fin setups and different nub fins in the nose as well as in the tail. And I'm going to use all the 3/4 inch future fins boxes on this board just to allow for maximum flexibility in where I can place my fins. And if I want to use a 1/2 inch tabbed fin on the board, all I have to do is just shim the fin in the fin box and it'll work perfectly fine. But the deeper tabs I find are a little bit stronger, and it's just nice being able to know I can put my side fins in the front or in the back. So before I can rotor out my fin boxes, I'm going to mark out where my fins are going to go, and then I will set up my rotor and go over rotoring out these fin boxes. So let's jump into it. To mark out my fin boxes, I'm going to measure up from the tail on the stringer and very lightly mark out the fin distances. I'm going to make sure it's very light so that I can easily remove the marks. Because I don't have a shaper square, I'm just going to use a framing square and a tape measure. I'll place my square along the stringer on my marks, and then measure in from the rail and mark the back of my fin. To mark the front of the fin box, I like to place the back of the fin box flange on the dot and place my square at the other end. I'll then measure from the stringer and place my other mark. To add toe into the fin box, you just subtract the amount of toe in you want from the distance to the stringer. On this board, I'm going with 0 toe in on the fins. This makes it a little easier to surf off the nose and to surf the board backwards. I'll then repeat this process to the other fins. Where this board is going to have fin boxes in the nose, I'm going to have a slightly different fin placement. The center box will be the same as the tail so that I can try some more wig skate style fins in it. I'm also going to add a twin fin option to the nose. This is so I have a different fin placement to try out, but it's also going to keep the fins in the nose out of the water more than if I place them in the same place as I have them in the tail. Once I have all my fins marked out, I'm going to level off the tail. Then I'll place my rotor template on top of the first fin I'm going to rotor out. And then I'll level the template with shims. Once I know what shims I need, I'll double check that the board is still level and check that the template is level. Having both level means that when I rotor the fin box groove, it should make it perfectly perpendicular to the bottom of the board. To rotor out the groove, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch rotor bit and an 1 1/4 inch rabbit bit with the bearing off the bottom. First I'll rotor the deeper groove using the 1/2 inch bit. I'll place my template on top of my rotor, and then I'll take my fin box and use it to set my depth. Because the bottom of the board is not flat, I'll have to make sure the bit is slightly deeper to match the gap between the rotor template and the bottom of the board. I'll then double check that everything is level and rotor out the groove. I'll then set up the jig for the opposite side fin and repeat the process so that the two sides are the same. With the deeper groove done, I'll then unplug my rotor and switch my bit to the 1 1/4 inch rabbit bit. I'll then set the depth for the flange of the fin box, making sure that I add the same extra depth I did for the other rotor bit. I'll then check my level on the board and template, and rotor the flange for each side. I like to test fit a fin box in the groove to make sure that I'm happy with how deep they sit. If it sits too high, I'll adjust my rotor depth and I'll rotor the same area again till I get the right depth. I'll then move on to the rest of the fin boxes, repeating the same process. Because the rotor bits I'm using give a really snug fit and the EPS I'm using is fairly dense, I find I get no play in the fin box. So I decided to see how close to 90 degrees I could get it with this digital angle finder. So I leveled off the tail of the board and placed my angle finder on top and zeroed the angle finder. I then attached the angle finder to a straight piece of metal, in this case a wrench, and placed it carefully inside the inside wall of the box. Knowing that this isn't going to be 100% accurate, getting it within half a degree is perfectly fine for me. I know if both the bottom of the board and template were level, it should be very close anyways. To glass the fin boxes in, I like to test fit them all on the board and double check that they are all the right way so that no fin boxes end up backwards. Then I'll take them out and place them in front of the rotored areas. This is just so that you make sure you don't install them backwards. I also like to rough up the outside of the box so that it gives them a better bond to the epoxy. I like to fill up the rotored area with a little bit of resin and then brush it around the area so that all the sides of the rotored area are covered in resin and so that it bonds well with the foam. Make sure you use enough resin that it pushes out of the tops of the vents in the box, and then brush it away the excess with a paintbrush, or I'm using a silicone barbecue brush, and I'm finding the silicone barbecue brush is nice because it is reusable and you can just peel off cured resin. Because my center box came out a little off when the rotor hit the epoxy glue joint, I'm going to add a little bit of fiberglass bubbles just to thicken the resin a little. This will help keep the resin temperature down when it's curing, and it'll also help hold the box in the correct position. This wasn't the cleanest install I've ever done with my fin boxes. I had a little bit of trouble with the center one when the rotor jumped a little bit, and just putting a little bit too much resin in the rotored out areas. I have it so these are very snug when you put them in, so you don't need a ton of resin. And in a couple spots I just put a little bit too much and it kind of overflowed everywhere. But it's better to have a little bit too much resin than not enough. So in the next video, I'm going to go over how to glass this, and for this board, I'm going to do a resin swirl, and I'm going to try some mica powder for the pigment, and see how that goes. So be sure to subscribe to see the next video on glassing this board before it's in the water.